Good morning, third grade. Our targets for today are I can identify, takeaway, and compare problems in a mixed group, and I can solve, takeaway, and compare problems in a mixed group. You know that a takeaway problem is a problem where there is one amount. A takeaway action happens and the amount decreases or becomes less. You know that in a takeaway problem, the amount you start with is the whole. The amount that you take away is a part, and the amount you are left with at the end is also a part. All takeaway problems have a starting amount. It's the total amount before the takeaway action happens. It's what the person started with. You also know that a takeaway problem always has a takeaway amount. The takeaway amount is how much was taken away. The takeaway amount is how much was taken away from the whole. This piece of information always includes the takeaway action. You also know that every takeaway problem includes the result amount, or the amount left. It's the amount after the takeaway action happens. It's the amount that's left over. Takeaway actions always have one whole and several parts. You know that You also have learned about compare problems. In a compare problem, there are two amounts. No action happens, and the two amounts are compared to find the difference. How many more or how many less? You know that in a takeaway problem, there are not parts and one whole. Instead, there are two wholes, the greater amount and the lesser amount. And those two whole amounts are compared to find the difference. You know that the difference is the distance between the greater amount and the lesser amount. All compare problems include a greater amount. It's the bigger amount, or the amount worth more. All compare problems also include a lesser amount. That's the smaller amount, or the amount worth less. And of course, all compare problems include the difference, a difference. The difference is the distance between the two amounts, and it is the extra that must be added to the smaller amount to equal the larger amount. You know that the difference is not a real amount like the greater amount and lesser amount. It is an imaginary amount. It's the distance between the greater amount and the lesser amount. So third grade, today when we're identifying takeaway and compare problems, when they're mixed together, we're going to have to ask ourselves, do takeaway and compare problems have a lot of similarities? What are some of the ways that takeaway and compare problems are the same? Think about takeaway and compare problems with me. How are they similar? Think, third grade, about what happens in a takeaway and a compare problem. Think about how we would solve a takeaway and compare problem. Think about how we represent takeaway and compare problems. Think about key words in takeaway and compare problems. How are takeaway and compare problems similar? Takeaway and compare problems are similar because they are both solved with addition and subtraction. Takeaway problems and compare problems are actually very different. Now we're going to think about how takeaway and compare problems are different. How could you tell them apart? Think about takeaway and compare problems again, but this time you're going to be looking for differences. Think about what happens in a takeaway and compare problem. Think about how we represent takeaway and compare problems. Think about how we solve takeaway and compare problems. Think about the key words in takeaway and compare problems. How are takeaway and compare problems different? Takeaway and compare problems are very different. One way that takeaway and compare problems are different is that takeaway problems have one amount that decreases, but compare problems have two amounts that are compared. Another way takeaway and compare problems are different is that takeaway problems have parts and a whole, but compare problems have two wholes, a greater amount and a lesser amount. Another way takeaway and compare problems are different is that takeaway problems are represented using a bar diagram that shows wholes and parts, But compare problems are represented with a tape diagram to show the greater amount, lesser amount, and difference. Takeaway and compare problems also have different key words. The key words in takeaway and compare problems often help us identify if the problem is takeaway or compare. Takeaway problems always have a takeaway action. So the key words in a takeaway problem are the takeaway actions. Actions like gave away, or lost, or ate, or broke. Any action that makes the amount decrease. Compare problems, however, do not have a takeaway action. They don't have any action at all because the two amounts are compared. Compare problems have difference words that show you are comparing two things. Difference words are words like more than or less than, greater than or fewer than, words that show you're comparing two things. The key words are a huge help when we're trying to identify if a problem is takeaway or compare. We're going to look at some takeaway and compare problems right now and practice identifying each problem based on what's happening in the problem and its key words. We're going to look at 6 problems together, and for each problem, we're going to ask ourselves, is this a takeaway problem or a compare problem? Here's the first problem. Jackson's family ate 147 blueberries with lunch. They had 58 blueberries left. How many blueberries did Jackson's family have before lunch? Here's our first piece of information. Jackson's family ate 147 blueberries with lunch. The other piece of information, of course, is that they had 58 blueberries left. The question we're trying to answer here is how many blueberries did Jackson's family have before lunch? So 3rd grade, let's think about this. What key words help us know what's happening in the problem? Well, we know that they ate some blueberries with lunch, they had some left, and we want to know how many they had before lunch. Oh, I noticed that there's an action in this problem. Jackson's family ate some of the blueberries, and then they only had some left. I know that when you eat something, you have less of it left over. It makes the amount decrease. So I know that ate is a takeaway action. That tells me that this problem is a takeaway problem because it includes a takeaway action. Let's look at another problem. A big bag of Skittles contains 741 candies, which is 233 more candies than you get in a big bag of Starburst. How many candies are in a bag of Starburst? Well, I can see here that a big bag of Skittles contains 741 candies. And I also see another piece of information is that 741 candies is 233 more candies than you get in a big bag of Starburst. The question, of course, is asking how many candies are in a bag of Starburst. Let's go ahead and think about what's happening in the problem and identify key words that help us figure out if it's takeaway or compare. Well, I know that in this problem, we know how many Skittles there are, and we know that there are more Skittles than Starburst. We're trying to find out how many Starbursts there are. I can see right away that there's no action. No action is happening in this problem. Instead, 3rd grade, we know that there are more candies in the Skittle bag than the bag of Starburst. That shows me that we are comparing how many Skittles there are, one amount, to how many Starbursts there are, another amount. Because I know that there are more candies in one of the bags than the other. More than are compare words that show I'm comparing two things. So I know, 3rd grade, that this problem is a compare problem. Now, 3rd grade, let's look at another problem. This time, you're going to identify the key words that help us know the problem type. Here's the next problem. Titlow Park has 417 fewer trees than flowers. There are 926 flowers, so how many trees are there at Titlow Park? I'm sure you noticed right away that one piece of information is that Titlow Park has 417 fewer trees than flowers. And of course, the other piece of information is that there are 926 flowers. We're trying to find how many trees there are at Titlow. So, what keywords help you know what's happening in this problem? Take a moment and think. What are the keywords that let you know if this is a takeaway problem or a compare problem? Do you see any takeaway actions? Do you see any difference words? Oh, yes. It's telling us that the park has fewer trees than flowers. That shows us that we're comparing the number of trees to the number of flowers. There are less trees, so there must be more flowers. I also notice there's no action. There's just this information that shows the difference between the trees and the flowers. That tells us, third grade, what kind of problem this is. Is this a takeaway or a compare problem? This is a compare problem because it has difference words. Fewer than. Let's look at another one. Until today, there were 943 books in the library. 211 books were checked out. How many books are still at the library? Of course, we see that there were 943 books at the library and that 211 books were checked out. We know we're trying to find out how many books are still at the library. What key words help us solve this problem? Do you see any takeaway actions? Do you see any difference words? Oh yes, I see that 211 books were checked out. I know that when someone checks books out from the library, they're taking books out of the library. There are fewer books in the library after that. Checking out is a takeaway action. So, what kind of problem is this? Takeaway or compare? Yes, this is a takeaway problem because it has the takeaway action checked out. Books are being checked out from the library, which decreases the number of books in the library. Now look at this problem. Anna Anaconda weighs 910 pounds. Her friend Ebenezer Egret only weighs 13 pounds. How much heavier is Anna than Ebenezer? Ooh, the compare words in this problem. Ooh, the keywords in this problem are a little bit trickier than some of the other problems we've seen before. Let's go ahead and quickly identify the information. Anna weighs 910 pounds. Ebenezer weighs only 13 pounds. I'm trying to figure out how much heavier Anna is than Ebenezer. I want you to take a moment and think about what the keywords are in this problem. What are the keywords that tell you if this is a takeaway or compare problem? The keywords in this problem. Now that you've thought about the keywords, third grade, I want you to tell me, is this a takeaway or compare problem? This is a compare problem because the question is asking. This is a compare problem because there are two amounts, Anna's weight and Ebenezer's weight, and they're being compared when it asks us how much heavier is Anna than Ebenezer. Heavier is a compare word that shows we're comparing the weight of two things. If one thing is heavier, the other is lighter. If one thing is heavier, it weighs more, and the other thing has to weigh less. This is a compare problem because we're comparing the weights of the two animals. Here's our last problem that we're going to identify together today. There were 421 turtle eggs. There were 421 turtle eggs on the beach. After they started hatching, there were only 97 turtle eggs left on the beach. How many turtle eggs must have hatched? Well, I can see that one piece of information is that there were 421 turtle eggs and that 97 turtle eggs were left after they started hatching. The question's asking me how many eggs must have hatched. I want you to think for a moment about what's happening in this problem and identify the key words on your own. What type of problem is this? Takeaway or compare? This is a takeaway problem because there is a takeaway action. There's one amount, the amount of turtle eggs on the beach, and then the takeaway action, eggs hatching, started. Eggs hatching occurs, and the amount of turtle eggs left decreases. This is clearly a takeaway problem because there is a takeaway action. Excellent job identifying story problems with me today. Now, third grade, we're going to talk just a little bit about solving takeaway and compare problems. You know that when we're solving a takeaway problem, we have wholes and parts. We have a whole and parts. And when an unknown number is a whole, you add because part plus part equals whole. You also know that when an unknown number is a part, you subtract because whole minus part equals part. So when you're solving a takeaway problem, if the whole is missing, you add, and if a part is missing, you subtract. When you're solving a compare problem, there are not wholes and parts. Instead, there's a greater amount, a lesser amount, and a difference. Thankfully, you already know that when the greater amount is the missing information, we add. When the lesser amount is the missing information, we subtract. And when the difference is the missing information, we subtract. So when you're solving a compare problem, if the greater amount's missing, you add, and if the lesser amount or difference is missing, you subtract. Let's go ahead and solve just two of those problems we've already looked at today. Here's the problem about our friends Anna Anaconda and Ebenezer Egret. Let's reread it to ourselves one time to remind ourselves of the story problem. Anna Anaconda weighs 910 pounds. Her friend Ebenezer Egret only weighs 13 pounds. How much heavier is Anna than Ebenezer? We've already determined that this is a compare problem because we're comparing the weights of Anna and Ebenezer. I need you to think for a moment about what information is the greater amount, what information is the lesser amount, and what information is the difference. Remember, those key words, heavier than, are going to help you determine the greater amount and the lesser amount. We want to know how much heavier Anna is than Ebenezer. So, my question to you is, what is the greater amount? Yes, the greater amount is that Anna weighs 910 pounds. If Anna's weight is the greater amount, what is the lesser amount? Of course, the lesser amount is 13 pounds, Ebenezer's weight. Now, third grade, I need you to think, what would we write for the difference? Oh yes, we don't know the difference. The question's asking about that. How much heavier is Anna than Ebenezer? So we might write N pounds, which is how much heavier Anna is than Ebenezer. Now that we've determined the missing information is the difference, we need to think about the equation we'll write. What equation would we write to solve this problem? We would subtract because we would subtract to solve this problem because the difference is missing. So the equation we would write is 910 pounds, Anna's weight, minus 13 pounds, Ebenezer's weight, equals N pounds, how much heavier Anna is than Ebenezer. You're going to need your whiteboard or a piece of paper because you're going to solve this problem now. On your whiteboard or piece of paper, solve 910 minus 13. Be very careful to line up 900 minus 13, just like I did. What is 913? 913 equals 897. So N equals 897. Now I want you to think about what our answer to the story problem would be. How much heavier is Anna than Ebenezer? An excellent third grade answer would sound like Anna is 897 pounds heavier than Ebenezer. Excellent job solving this compare problem. Let's go ahead and solve one takeaway problem together. Let's review this problem, even though we read it earlier, so it's fresh in our mind. There were 421 turtle eggs on the beach. After they started hatching, there were only 97 turtle eggs left on the beach. How many turtle eggs must have hatched? Third grade, we're going to fill out this bar diagram together. I want you to think, what is the greater amount in this problem? I want you to think, what is the whole in this problem? The whole in this problem is 421 because it's the total eggs they started with. I want you to think, what is one of the parts? Well, one of the parts is the eggs that hatched. N. I want you to think, what are the two parts? Of course, the two parts are N eggs hatched and 97 the eggs left. Now, third grade, you need to decide what equation we would write to solve this problem. I agree that we would write a subtraction equation to solve this problem because we're missing a part. So the equation that we would write to help us solve the problem would be that 421 total eggs minus 96 eggs left equals N, the eggs hatched. On your whiteboard or piece of paper, you need to write the problem 421 minus 96 vertically and solve it. What does 421 minus 96 equal? 421 minus 96 equals 325. So N equals 325. What would the answer to this problem be? How many turtle eggs must have hatched? An excellent third grade answer to this takeaway problem would be 325 turtle eggs must have hatched. Thank you for practicing identifying and solving takeaway and compare problems with me today, third grade. Have a great day.